At first, the crying didn't sound close. It just drifted across the desert, thin and broken like the sound of wind slipping through stone. But the longer he listened, the clearer it became. Someone was calling for help, and they were getting closer. The Arizona desert stretches farther than most people expect. It's just miles and miles of open land, broken only by scrub, rock, and distant mountains that blur into the heat. During the day, the desert feels exposed and endless. But at night, it becomes something else entirely quiet in a way that makes even small sounds feel deliberate. This story exists within that quiet. Across the American Southwest, there are well-known tales of voices heard in the dark. These stories are rooted in folklore, shaped by isolation and the kind of fear that only comes from being truly alone. None of these tales are supported by physical evidence. There are no confirmed sightings, no recordings that hold up under scrutiny. But the accounts continue, passed from traveler to traveler, especially among those who drive the long desert roads after the sun goes down. The man in this story was returning from a job site late in the evening. His route took him off the main highway and onto a long stretch of secondary road one that cut straight through the open desert. The moon was high, pale and distant, casting just enough light to reveal the eerie shapes of cacti and stone. He had driven this road many times before and knew it well. About an hour into the drive, he lowered his window just a little to let in the cooler air. The desert night carried a faint breeze, smelling of dust and dry earth, and that was when he heard it. The sound was barely noticeable at first. He thought it was just the wind shifting through the rocks. But then the sound rose again, longer this time and uneven. It had a rhythm, an emotion. It was crying. He slowed the car, listening carefully. The sound seemed to come from somewhere ahead, off the side of the road. He scanned the dark landscape, but saw nothing, no lights, no movement. The rational explanations came to him quickly. Animals can make some very unsettling noises. Coyotes, foxes, even certain owls can produce sounds that resemble a person crying. This is well documented, but this sounded different. It wasn't sharp or wild. It was low, steady, and undeniably human. He told himself not to stop. Every horror movie, every ghost story starts with someone stopping on a deserted road. But then the crying changed. It wasn't just noise anymore. It became a word, soft, strained, almost swallowed by the night. Please, the word floated across the sand, carried by the wind directly to his ear. He braked hard. The car skidded slightly on the loose gravel, and in that same instant the desert returned to absolute silence. No wind, no sound, just the faint ticking of his engine cooling in the night air. He sat there for several seconds, his heart beating much faster than he liked to admit. Logic told him to keep driving. All the stories he'd ever heard told him the same thing. But instinct, that deep, primal part of the brain that reacts to human distress, pulled at him. He had to know. He stepped out of the car. The night air felt colder than before. The moonlight revealed nothing unusual, just open desert stretching outward in all directions. He called out cautiously, his voice sounding small in the vastness. Is someone there? Do you need help? The sound returned almost instantly, crying again, louder now, closer, but still. He saw no one. He felt the hairs on his arms lift. The sound wasn't behaving normally. It didn't echo. It seemed to just flatten against the landscape, as if the sand itself was absorbing it rather than letting it bounce back. He took a few hesitant steps off the road, his shoes crunching on the gravel. As he moved, the crying shifted direction. It wasn't in front of him anymore. It was behind him. He spun around, his eyes wide. The road lay empty. His car sat alone, its headlights cutting to pale pots through the darkness. The crying came again, closer still. So close now that he could almost hear the breath between the sobs. But there was still nothing to see. Desert folklore often includes warnings about voices without bodies. Some experts offer a scientific explanation. They say sound can travel unusually far across flat land at night, a phenomenon known as temperature inversion. This could carry voices for miles beyond their source, making them seem to come from nowhere. That explanation fits many accounts, but it does not explain why the sound seemed to move, to react to his presence. He retreated toward his car, suddenly aware of how exposed he was, a single figure in an ocean of darkness. The crying followed him, never getting louder, never getting quieter, just present. It was like a shadow made of sound. He reached the driver's door and hesitated, his hand trembling on the handle. And that was when the crying stopped. its place came a whisper. "Don't leave." The words were not shouted. They were spoken calmly, almost gently, as if from someone standing just outside his field of vision right over his shoulder. He ripped the door open, threw himself inside, and locked it. The engine started on the first try, a sound he had never been so grateful to hear. The moment he pulled back onto the road, the sound vanished completely. There was no echo, no fading away. It was just an absence. Silence rushed back in to fill the void. He drove without stopping, his eyes locked on the road ahead until he finally reached the bright, comforting lights of the highway. Later, he found himself at a remote gas station, filling his tank under the buzzing fluorescent lights. Needing to tell someone, he mentioned the experience to the local man working the counter. The man listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When the story was finished, he just nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said, wiping down the counter with a rag. "People hear her out there. Who?" The driver asked, his voice still shaky. "The crying woman," the local replied. "Some say she's a lost traveler from long ago. Some say she never was a person at all." The driver had to ask, "Has anyone ever found her?" The man shook his head, his expression serious. "People who go looking don't find anything, or they don't talk about it afterward." And this is where the story blurs, where fact ends and folklore takes over. Some versions of the legend claim the crying woman appears to test travelers. Those who leave are spared, but those who follow her voice are led deeper and deeper into the desert, never to be seen again. Others say the sound isn't a ghost at all, but belongs to the land itself, a memory shaped by wind and silence into something that sounds human. There are no official records of anyone disappearing directly because of this voice. No park ranger warnings mention a crying sound in the night. Rangers will explain such experiences through acoustics, the psychological effects of isolation, and the mind's tendency to create patterns in unfamiliar silence. All reasonable explanations, all perfectly logical, and yet the locals still warn newcomers. They still tell their children, "Don't stop for voices you can't see, because in the desert, the danger isn't always what's chasing you. Sometimes the real danger is what you choose to walk toward." The desert doesn't need to hunt you down. It only needs you to step far enough away from the road.